In this tutorial, we'll explore several methods of quantifying risk and the relationship to return distributions. Recall, a financial return distribution provides a visual illustration of the frequency and magnitude of various returns. We'll begin our exploration with one of the most traditional and common measures of risk for financial investments, volatility. Volatility is a statistical measure of dispersion of returns from its mean. Visually, this can be thought of as a way of measuring the width of our distribution. In other words, volatility answers the question of how large might a typical or average up or down move in price be. Volatility is also known as the standard deviation, or sigma, and may be computed with the formula given. This is equivalent to the square root of the distribution's second moment, variance. In our example distribution, we can compute the volatility to be 1%. This means, on average, a typical move up or down would be around 1% using daily data. In finance, it is common to compute volatility on an annualized basis. This can be done using the same formula and annual returns in place of daily returns, or by converting daily volatility to annualized volatility with a conversion factor. Investment securities with high volatilities are generally more risky than securities with low volatilities. While volatility does well to give us a quick view of the size of typical moves, it may be natural to be more concerned with negative returns only. After all, risk is often associated with the possibility of losing money. This was the motivation for our next risk metric, downside volatility. Downside volatility, as the name implies, measures the dispersion of returns that fall below the mean, or target value. Visually, this measure only captures information from the below average or negative returns. Downside volatility is also known as semi-deviation, with a formula that is similar to our previous volatility metric. Note, the difference comes from only considering returns below the mean, or target value. This has been particularly popular for institutions, such as banks or insurance firms, that have good insight into their revenue side via premiums or deposits. So far, both metrics examined measure risk in terms of average or typical moves. However, what if we're interested in the potential of extreme events or very large losses? One of the first metrics to quantify this is value at risk, or VAR. Value at risk is a statistical measure that quantifies a potential loss threshold over a given time period. This is generally stated with a probability that losses will exceed the VAR threshold. For example, with a 5% probability, this investment may have a daily loss exceeding 3.7%. Similarly, for the same investment, VAR at the 1% probability level may be 5.2%. This means 1% of the time, a daily loss would exceed 5.2%. Any probability level may be used, however the 1% and 5% levels are common. VAR is often used to compute firm or portfolio risk levels. It has been widely accepted, with the Bank of International Settlements, under the Basel II Accord, requiring VAR as a global risk standard. In mathematics, VAR can be thought of as a percentile of the distribution and has the following formula. While VAR is useful to begin understanding potential extreme loss levels, it is limited from saying anything about losses beyond its threshold. This leads us to our final risk measurement, expected shortfall. Also known as conditional value at risk, or expected tail loss, expected shortfall measures the average potential loss beyond the VAR threshold. Visually, if we look at only returns beyond a specific VAR measurement, say the 5% level, expected shortfall would average these extreme potential losses. The benefit is that expected shortfall is more sensitive to the shape and magnitude of the tail of the distribution. One note, both value at risk and expected shortfall may be computed for observed distributions, i.e. actual financial historical returns, or for a model distribution that can assign probabilities to losses that have not yet occurred in history. We'll cover this topic of modeling distributions in our next tutorial. This completes the risk measurement tutorial.